Hi HR Nation, it's Chris Rainey. Welcome to HR Leaders, the show where we interview today's most successful and innovative HR practitioners 5 days a week. Today we have a very special guest. We're joined by Stewart Friedman. Stu is the former Director of Leadership Development Center at Ford. He's now a professor at the Wharton School of Business and the founding director of the Wharton Leadership Program, as well as Wharton's Work-Life Integration Project. He's also the author of the books Leading the Life That You Want, Total Leadership, and Baby Bust. Stu, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Fantastic. Stu, fill in the gaps. Tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself and your journey.
Well, after I got my PhD at the University of Michigan in organizational psychology about 150 years ago, I came to the Wharton School having done a large-scale study of how companies in the Fortune 500 develop and select their top talent. So this was the first large-scale study of its kind where we had half of the Fortune 500 in our sample. And I interviewed and got survey data from the heads of HR from all these companies and did a systematic study of how they did it, what I call their succession systems. And I looked to see how the impact of the way that they went about managing the succession and development process for the top three levels of leaders, how that affected their reputation and their financial performance. So I wrote a number of articles and pieces about that work and consulted with many organizations through the 80s and into the 90s on succession planning and executive development. And that's what led to my founding the Wharton Leadership Program in 1991. At the same time, however, I was always interested in the relationship between work and the rest of life and had studied that topic in school. But it wasn't until the birth of my first son, which is October 1987, that I became transfixed by this notion of what I was now going to do to create, to try to help build a world in which this precious being now would be able to flourish. So I started to ask everyone around me, including my students at the time, what are you going to do? What can we do to ensure that we are cultivating a world in which we are growing the next generation, not just of talent in your business, but the next generation, period.
Yeah.
And that was a new idea for a lot of people to be having that question raised in a business context. It led me to start research in the field as well as in systematic studies on a large scale of this whole set of questions involving how do people succeed in integrating the different parts of their lives for mutual gain. And because I was a man at the Wharton School talking about families and kids, I was strange, and I stood out and got a lot of attention because most of the people addressing those questions at the time were women. So I got a lot of attention in the media, the business media, and we started to convene conferences at Wharton and then sponsored with Merck at Merck through the 90s, and those got just a lot of visibility, which helped us in a number of ways to develop new knowledge about in the very question that we were primarily interested in. What does it take for people at different levels of their careers to integrate the different parts of their lives, and how do we teach that to our business school students, to executives? So fast forward to the late 90s, and the CEO of Ford Motor Company wanting to ignite a change in the culture of the company, hired about 30 of us at the senior executive level to come in from very different kinds of environments. I was particularly odd, but there were people from
Wow.
media companies from all over that were part of his effort to infuse the culture with new blood at the top, and many other ways in which we were trying to change the culture of the company, really to transform this iconic 100-year-old manufacturing giant Um, so I spent a few years in that role. I took leave from Wharton. And one of the things that we did there was to create new programming that and the particular angle that I brought to the leadership growth idea was that it had to be from the perspective of the whole person. So what we did there with a number of just wonderful colleagues was to create this program that I called Total Leadership, which was about leadership from the point of view of the whole person, where we took what we'd been learning about how to grow leadership talent with the skills and knowledge that it takes to integrate the different parts of life for mutual gain. And we married that into one initiative, which was a huge success for us there. People were just incredibly energized by the prospect of undertaking a leadership development program that was about improving their lives, their marriages, their relationship with their kids, their connection to the community and with their friends, and their own personal health, mental, physical, spiritual. So when that stint was over, my few years at Ford, I came back to Wharton and started teaching this, and it became a very successful elective course in our MBA, and especially in our executive MBA program, where I've been teaching it pretty much ever since, and have written a number of books that you kindly mentioned, and offered this course virtually through MOOCs, massive open online courses, and in workshops and all kinds of initiatives. And now I speak publicly about this content, for which there is a great deal of hunger.
Yes.
Because, people are looking for models of leadership that are not just about work, but about life.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, a very fascinating journey that you've been on as well, and I suppose that's really molded and shaped where you are today, right? And it's funny you say what you're saying to me now, although you was doing it many years ago, is only now a conversation that I'm starting to hear more and more with our leaders. And our typical leader that we work with, as I mentioned before, is a chief HR officer or a senior leader within a specialist function, and it's something they find very challenging, that balance. Between, and it's something that they don't discuss often, and even when it is discussed, it's kind of brushed to one side as it's just part of the job, and
Right.
there's no real attention given to it. Could you share some of the insights that you found along that journey with our leaders? That'd be
Sure.
great.
Yeah. No. What I have found is that there's a real need and interest in finding tools that enable the conversation and efforts to create meaningful change about how to integrate the different parts of life. And it starts with getting rid of the term balance. So when I, 25 years ago, founded the Work-Life Integration Project, I specifically used the term integration and not balance because, and indeed my first article, which was like the first big article in the Harvard Business Review on this topic, 1998, I called it Work and Life, the End of the Zero-Sum Game. In which we laid out the basic ideas that became the basis of the Total Leadership Program. And the idea in this model is, and this was based on what we found from going into the field and finding people who were successful at doing this. What do? Well, there are three principles that they follow, and it's not about balance. It's about finding harmony and integration by first being real, clarifying what matters most to you, your values and your vision, being whole, and that is acting with integrity by respecting the whole person, the different parts of your life, and being innovative, continually creating new ways of getting things done that create value for your work and your home and your community and yourself personally, what I have come to call four-way wins. And the breakthrough concept is this four-way wins because when you present to people, from senior HR people to the shop floor employee, the goal here is not balance, it's not trade-off, but how can you find a way to innovate in an experiment bounded in time, a small step that you can take that is going to make things demonstrably better and improve results for your work and your home and your community and for yourself personally. And when you pose that question, that challenge to people, what I have found in asking literally over 100,000 people this question,
Yeah.
I've never found anyone who could say, I have any idea how to do that. Everyone is able to do that. It's just that they're not asked that question. And I think that is the big contribution here, because it's not either or, it's both and. And if you unleash that question on people, it opens up their creativity, because they are highly motivated to find solutions to that problem. And the way that you get through the resistance that many executives feel about addressing this question is to put work first in the equation. Say, how can you make some kind of innovative change in how you get things done that is going to improve your performance at work and the other parts of your life? And that helps everyone to see that this is about better business results and improved performance in the rest of your life. Now, there's always skepticism about this, always.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
like every single day I encounter skepticism. I have it with my oatmeal for breakfast. It's just, here it comes every day. However, once you take people through a process, and this is what my books and speeches and workshops are all about, of identify what matters most to you, identify who matters most to you in the different parts of your life. Who are your key constituents, your key stakeholders at work, at home, in the community? What do those people expect of you? What do you expect of them? See your whole life as a social system, the intimate circle around you that you can influence, and see where there's compatibility among those expectations, where there is conflict, and then dialogue, talk to those people about what they really expect of you. And that's when you discover that what they expect of you, in fact, is a little bit different
Than what you thought. Yeah.
And it's usually a little less, so you feel less stress. If you don't believe me, try it. You'll see I'm right. And a little bit different than what you thought. And this opens up all kinds of creative opportunities for innovation and change. So people then try experiments, delegating more, working out more, reducing distraction by taking a short digital detox, sharing more about their real vision for the future. People try all different kinds of experiments, and they measure them. They measure their impact over a course of about a month or two to see what is the impact on their work and their home and their community and themselves personally. And what they discover in reflecting on that experience of experimentation is that there's a lot more opportunity and freedom to choose how to live in ways that create value for your work and the other parts of your life. And so it's not an either or, and that's the big obstacle in the way most people think about work.
And they still are thinking that. Everyone's still referencing that same.
I know.
Everyone that I've spoken to, actually. Mm.
Of course, yes. No, I mean, I've been at this for 30 years, and I encounter it all the time. You break through that by showing people that they have within their control opportunities to create value in all the different parts, and they realize, oh, there's more of that I can do. And as a head of HR, I can create opportunities for my people to do that as well. I'm working right now with the senior executive team at one of the major banks in Europe. And we're going through this process over the course of about 5 months. And these 12 people start out by telling their leadership story, where they've come from, where they're going, what their values are. They've identified their critical stakeholders, and they are right now, as we speak, talking with them, exchanging, inquiry about what really matters to you. How can I help you? How can you help me? And developing a richer understanding of the landscape that they navigate every single day. And they're coming up with ideas for innovation that they're going to try. Mm-hmm. And some of those experiments will succeed, others won't. But in every case, as they go through this, in peer-to-peer coaching trios, so they're supporting each other, they're helping each other, they're holding each other to account to make sure that they are moving forward on these ideas, they will discover new insights about how to lead in a way that creates sustainable change, because it's sustainable because it works for all the different parts of your life. And that's what people are really demanding now, especially young people.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point. I was going to mention that. I think with the younger generation, it is actually more of a demand because it's part of the culture that we
Absolutely.
live within. Could you share some practicals? I think you already have shared some already, of course, but could you share some practical steps that we could take and that we could implement immediately to start moving towards that?
Sure. One of the things that I do, no matter where I am or speaking about this, and I mean, I'll be speaking to 2,000 people at Lincoln Center on Friday morning in New York City, and in the hour and a half that I have with them, I'm going to make sure that they do what I call the four-way view, which opens up your mind to the possibilities. And the four-way view is pretty simple. You just think about what is work to me, home or family, whatever that is, community. It's your friends, neighbors, social groups, and then the domain, the fourth domain, your private self, your mind, body, and spirit. And so you do a quick diagnostic in one column. How important is each domain to you? So take 100 points and divide them up according to how important each domain is to you. In the second column, take another 100 points and indicate where is the focus of your attention in a typical week or a typical month on a percentage basis. All right, so and talk a lot about attention, which is the leader's most precious asset, I would suggest. Where is your mind? What do you choose to invest your attention in? And then how satisfied are you with how things are going in each of the different domains? And how well are you performing in meeting the expectations of the key people in each domain, including yourself? And then talk to someone about what you just discovered, about the consequences of the choices you make. And what ideas occur to you about what you could do in your real world now? What small step could you take that would enable you to improve your performance in all the different parts? Pop, the ideas start to flow.
Yeah.
And then talk it over with someone and then come up with an idea for change. So that's like the really super short version.
Sure.
But you can do that. And you'd be amazed at what you start to think about as possibilities for innovation that you can actually try. And once you do, you gain a greater sense of confidence and you generate new ideas and you want to start teaching other people.
Yeah, I can see how, going back to your point earlier as well, that just asking that question to yourself, that's so powerful. Just to ask those questions to yourself, in some cases will lead you towards, as you said, those new ideas, those innovations of how you can improve that as well.
Yes, but it helps a lot to be doing this in conversation with other people who,
yeah,
as I'm sure you know, and most of your listeners know, that
yeah.
it's in a coaching context that you start to become more clear, more articulate about what's really on your mind, and other people with a sense of genuine interest and curiosity can help you to elicit what might be a layer below the surface.
Along your journey, I'm sure you've seen many successes on how this has really helped people and changed their lives. Could you share perhaps one journey that really stands out to you, or success that's something that's really stands out to you that you've seen in your career?
Oh wow!
I know it's hard to choose one.
Well, there's so many. So in our executive program, in the executive MBA, I teach 100 students a year in our California and San Francisco and Philadelphia campus, and the story. So these are people in their mid 30s typically, and I often hear from their spouses who will tell me,
"Thank you so much.
You really changed our lives together, because now my wife is just much more engaged in our family life, and she's more productive at work as a result." And in fact, what the book project that I'm now working on is my publisher, which is Harvard Business Review Press, has asked me to do a third book for them, and it's taking the total leadership model and applying it to parents in partnership. So we're doing a virtual workshop starting in January. Maybe I'll get a chance to talk with you about that once we're done with that, and once that book launches, that is dedicated just to parents and their partners in all different kinds of partnership arrangements.
Yeah.
I think the most compelling stories come from at the level of the organization, where we, in a number of settings, have been able to study the impact of what people do to improve business performance. So in one organization, we documented tens of millions of dollars of cost of savings, cost avoidance, cost reduction, productivity improvements, new revenue ideas from certain experiments that people did. So there's real monetary value.
Sure.
In addition to people feeling better about the company and about themselves. So the journeys are, the most compelling are those stories of people reconnecting with their families in ways that help them to be more productive at work. There was one guy who was this was in a manufacturing company. The participant in our program was a plant manager, and one of her subordinates was a problem employee. You were just earlier speaking about performance management. He was on the bubble and about to be let go because he had a pattern of poor performance. But he was, prior in his prior years, a solid contributor. Well, the plant manager in her stakeholder dialogues with her various people discovered from him, her subordinate, that he had a son who was blind, who was just starting school at a special school for children who were blind. And he never had a chance to take his son to school. And he was very distracted and very disturbed by this because of his work schedule.
Sure.
So when she found that out, she made a very quick and easy change to his schedule that enabled him to go take his child to school a few days a week. It was no big deal for her. He'd never asked. He was afraid to.
Yeah.
But now we created this environment in which she sort of empowered people to tell her what she needed to hear about what they needed from her. And she made this change. And then when she reported, the results of this and a number of other experiments that she had tried to our group of about 50 people, and she told us what had happened, I remember this visit vividly because there was very few people who were not tearing up as they listened to her story and tell us about how this guy completely turned around his performance.
Of course.
And was declaring her, to her deep love and affection for her and her company, as a result of this little tiny adjustment that she'd made. So that's just one example that comes to mind as I think about how lives have been changed by this very simple process that actually takes a lot of effort to make happen. But what motivates people to do it is that they see that this is not just about creating, economic value for their business. It's about their lives, and they care a lot.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So how can, you mentioned earlier something that HR leaders can not only use for themselves to empower themselves, but also their teams. What are some of the things that they can do to engage their teams and their own HR team, but also the wider business in shaping that thinking?
Yeah, well, at totalleadership.org, there's all kinds of information about what we've done and, various ways to use these ideas and bring them to life. The book, Total Leadership, is written. It's my course. It's the Wharton Executive MBA course with examples of everything that I've talked about here, the 9 different kinds of experiments that people do. So that's the place to start, is the website and the book. And there's all kinds of free tools and resources that you can just grab off the web and start to use them. And of course, I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested about other things that we can do to try to make it higher impact and more value to people. But I wrote the book so that people could use it anywhere. And indeed, it's in a bunch of different languages and it's being used all over the world.
Yeah. Well, that leads us quite nicely onto the Quickfire Round, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and you have no more than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers.
Oh, dear. As you can tell, that's going to be difficult for me, Chris, because I like to talk a lot. But please, fire away.
It's I suppose it's part of the job, right? What's the number one thing that was holding you back in your career?
That was holding me back?
Yeah. What was the number one thing that was holding you back in your career from achieving what you have?
I would say that it was not attending well enough to my true passions.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fantastic.
when I did that, things really took off.
I can certainly relate to that. What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
Make sure that what you're doing creates business value.
Yeah, fantastic. Aside from your books, which I will definitely leave it link in the description, what's one book that you will recommend, that you would recommend to our audience, and why? It can be more than one, by the way.
Okay, so this might seem strange. It's not a business book. The book that has had a profound influence on my thinking and just the way that I look at life is James Joyce's Ulysses,
Mm-hmm.
which is a significant undertaking to read, but it evokes a life, a world in a way that is just deeply illuminating. So that's my off the top of my head recommendation.
No problem. And I think you mentioned this earlier, but what internet, if our members want to understand more about the work that you're doing, what are some of the internet resources that they can tap into to learn more?
Yeah, totalleadership.org is the place to go. And everything's there, including information about my radio show on
Yeah,
FM radio. So
definitely.
if any listeners in the US and Canada have Sirius, they can listen to Sirius XM Wharton Business Radio,
Yeah,
channel 111. And I have free podcasts of those shows at workandlifepodcast.com.
fantastic. Well, I'll definitely link them up. What about your own personal learning as well? For you, how do you keep up to date with current events and current thinking in your field?
Well, it's just remarkable today how easy it is to do that. But I read a few newspapers every day, actual print.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to many different kinds of magazines, both political, economic, psychological
Mm-hmm.
journals, and I'm on Twitter every day, and I try to I contain that time that
Yeah.
I'm spending on Twitter. I'm pretty diligent about that, but that's another source for me in terms of the immediate currency of world affairs.
Fantastic. And what's one thing around your work that most excites you today?
Well, this project I'm doing for parents now, and we're doing a pilot starting in January with alumni of my Total Leadership course in the Executive MBA program. And I thought just a few people would sign up for that, but we are oversubscribed for the pilot, and
Wow.
there's people are just so excited about. Wow, I can't wait to do this in an environment that you still are going to lead with other people who are engaged in tackling these questions. So we're going to be doing that virtually through a medium like the one that we're on here, and we hope to develop from that not just the raw material for our next book, but also for a workshop series that we'll be offering through the internet. So I'm super excited about that.
So is there any space available for our members, or is it completely full up now?
Well, if you're, it's completely filled up, and it's only for people who took my course originally. So
okay.
we're starting with them.
Makes sense. That makes sense.
And their spouses, but stay tuned. And if you go to our site, sign up to the newsletter, or just write to me directly. I'm happy to hear from your listeners at my email address. If you go to the Wharton site, you can find my faculty page there. That has all my contact information.
Perfect. Well, look, thank you very much for joining us on the show and providing such actionable advice. And I know our members will be a lot better off for it. So I really appreciate that. Guys, make sure you head over to hrleaders.com. There you'll find all of the show notes from the episode. All of the links we've discussed will be in the description, as well as links to Stu's books as well. Stu, give our listeners one parting piece of guidance, and then we'll say goodbye.
So one parting piece of guidance would be to pursue the thing that matters most to you in a way that creates value for other people. That seems to be the trick. And in Leading the Life You Want, my most recent book, I describe how 6 great leaders did that to demonstrate that you don't have to forsake the other parts of your life to be successful. And in fact, the most successful people are those who commit to and are devoted to their families, their communities, their personal growth and development. Those are the people who have the persistence, the will, the strength that it takes to do work of significance in their professions and in their public life.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an amazing guest, Stu. Thanks again. And I wish you all the best of your work, and I look forward to following you further. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from many of our members. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me, Chris.